Hey y'all, Dixie here. Today I want to talk to you about my favorite tents, plural. I have tried a lot of tents in the last 10 years that I've been through hiking and backpacking. So I do think that there are different tents that have different applications. So I do have a few different ones based on the different applications. But anyway, let's get started. First, I want to talk about my overall go-to tent for going out on a weekend trip or even on a through hike. And that is the Z-Packs Duplex Zip. That's the tent that I most recently through hiked with. I used it on the Arizona Trail earlier this spring and into the summer. And it's more or less just like the same old duplex I've grown to know and love over a lot of years of using it. But instead of having the little bungee cord wrap around the little piece of plastic, it has zippered vestibule doors, which I really liked. It just kind of helps secure things more. I think it lets less wind through. Also, I think there's less noise with the sound of the tent whipping in the wind when wind can't catch on it as much since it is zippered up. For those of y'all who are not familiar with the Z-Packs Duplex design in general, it is a two-person tent, single walled, and it's made from Dyneema composite fabric, which is a very strong and waterproof fabric. I love it because you don't have to worry about putting a ground cloth under Z-Packs shelters, which is wonderful and one less thing to worry about in my opinion, and less weight to carry. All of Z-Packs duplex designs have the same typical, vestibule and zippered mesh door on either side, a bathtub floor, and a little mesh border around the bathtub floor so that any condensation that collects on that single wall tent on the inside will just run down and through the mesh and it won't collect on the bathtub floor. Most of the two-person designs are just over a pound, but certainly less than 1.5 pounds. And just for the record, they do have one-person tents, but I personally prefer having however many people there are plus one in the way of space in a tent when I backpack, or even if I'm going on a weekend trip, because I like having that extra room for gear. So if it's just me, I like a two-person tent. If it's me and another person, I like a three-person tent. So if you wanted to save weight or money, then one-person designs do exist that are pretty similar to the duplex. So the only issue I have with declaring that the Z-Packs Duplex Zip is my favorite, go-to of tents is they've discontinued it. Or at least they've decided to change some things up and call it something different. I think that the Z-Packs Duplex Zip has more or less been replaced by the Z-Packs Duplex Pro. So the Pro, which is very comparable, weighs 19.5 ounces. That's just 0.1 ounce different than the Zip weighed. And it has, instead of the half moon mesh doors on either side, they have double L doors, which is amazing. I like the L door, but I wish that somehow it could L both ways. Does that make sense? I like the L's better than the moon. I just wish that it L'd both ways. The room in here
how you would do that unless you had to.
I know you'd have. I know. And then it'd be more weight because of that. Look, I just want it magical, okay? When we were using the Z-Packs Trio Pivot on Springer Mountain, I was talking about how I wish the mesh doors had double L zipper doors instead of just a single L. And so the Pro actually does have that. I knew it could exist. Having the double L doors just makes it convenient for getting out whichever side of the door you want to. And then also when you set it up, you don't have to worry about where that mesh opening is going to be relative to your head. So you can just set up and, conveniently get out the mesh door regardless. Since the zip tent doesn't exist anymore, if I had to tell you another go-to tent that I would take on a through hike that I currently own and have actually tested out, it would be my Z-Packs Duplex L. This is essentially the basic Z-Packs Duplex design, but it had a little bit extra head or leg space to it hence the duplex L. I think it works better for people who are taller and, you know, just allows you to stretch out a little bit more. Don't have to worry about your sleeping bag rubbing up on the side of, you know, a dewy tent wall. But the funny thing about this tent is it also doesn't exist anymore. Well, I mean, mine exists, but like it's not for sale anymore. It looks like from Z-Pac's website that what kind of took the place of the Duplex L is the Z-Pac's Duo Pivot. And I have to say that I think this one's gonna be pretty bomb diggity. If you were wanting the Duplex L to give you a little more foot or head space, I think the Pivot is gonna do that much more successfully. With the Duo Pivot design, there is a separate little tent pole that sets up and just really does pick up the side of the tent, offering more head or foot space just depending on how you orient the tent. I guess the only kind of downer about this tent, if you will, is that the mesh doors have just a single L opening on either side. So, I mean, you're probably gonna wanna pay attention to how you orient the tent anyway, depending on if you want your head where that little 32-inch pole is, or if you want your feet there. So, I mean, if you're gonna be thinking about that anyway, it's probably not much of a deal breaker with just a single L door. But this one also has zippered vestibules, so I think that that's a win. This tent weighs 18.6 ounces and costs $849. So with all of this said, if I was in the market for a new 2-person tent to go backpacking or through hiking, I'd be struggling to decide between the Z-Pac's Duplex Pro and the Duo Pivot. If the Pivot had double L doors, then that would probably be my go-to hands down. So I guess it would really just boil down to whether the extra headspace was more important to me. So if I was hiking in an area that I thought condensation would be more of an issue, I'd probably go with the Pivot. If I was gonna be hiking in an area that is more arid, then I might opt for the Pro at that point. So the next tent I wanna talk about is the Z-Pac's Trio Pivot, and I've already kind of mentioned that a little bit, but this is my favorite go-to tent, hands down. If I have 2 people, or if I have 2 people and a dog, or 2 people and a toddler. It's basically the Z-Pac's triplex design, but with a lot more head space or foot space depending on how you want to orient the tent. It's just a bigger version of the Duo Pivot that I was talking about earlier, but this is the one that me and Rodney and Bratcher used when we went camping out on Springer Mountain recently. It is by far the roomiest 3-person tent, well, the roomiest ultralight tent that I have ever stayed in. And I mean, for the weight of it, you could take it if you just wanted like a mansion while you backpack as a solo backpacker. I mean, it really is overkill, but it would be luxury on trail. Just like Z-Pac's other tents, it's made from Dyneema, so it's made from a waterproof, really strong material. You don't have to worry about a ground cloth, which is nice. And it also has a bathtub floor with that mesh little border around it to help with draining condensation out. It is also single walled and has a vestibule on either side. And to create that extra head or foot space, it comes with a little tent pole to help prop that side up. Just like with the Duo Pivot, it only has single L mesh doors. But like I mentioned before, if you're gonna pay attention to the orientation of that extra space, then it's not that big of a deal. Now, I know some people get freaked out by tents that you have to use trekking poles to set up, and the 2-person tents that I've mentioned so far and this 3-person tent all require trekking poles to set up. However, Z-Pac's does have options for freestanding tents. They come with very lightweight tent poles. So if you want to go with a freestanding tent, you don't have to have something that's super heavy. You can still have an ultralight tent. And for the people who are like, that's cool and all, but $700 to $900 for a tent is not in my budget and is not happening. Well, I also have a favorite budget tent. I would typically say that the Lanshan Pro 2 is my go-to budget tent, but they're not quite so budget friendly as they used to be anyway. So considering the price and the weight of the Lanshan 2 Pro. It weighs 2 pounds and costs $190. At this price point, I would honestly consider Gossamer Gear's the 2. It's a 2-person single-walled nylon tent. I tested it out while I was on the Foothills Trail. It's a great little tent. Right now it's on sale for $224 and it only weighs 24 ounces. So it's 8 ounces lighter, half a pound than the Lanshan 2 Pro, and only costs about 30 bucks more. So anyway, that would be my go-to more budget-friendly option. All right, y'all, well, that is all I have for you today on my current favorite tents. If you've got a favorite tent that you love for backpacking or through hiking or any different application, please feel free to share that in the comments below, because I know people are oftentimes in the market for tents, and you know, you don't know what somebody's preferences are and why they prefer that thing. I'm just one person with my own experiences and preferences, so hearing from the masses I think is always good. Thank y'all so much for watching. If you found this video useful, don't forget to share it with a friend, and we will see y'all next time.